Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor, the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Red Circle. Also, the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, turn the notifications on. Also, check out our gambling and fantasy sponsors. Both of these are legal in the state of Florida. Better Edge, use the code 5RSN. You'll get $20 to play, and you can play in our tournaments. We have a tournament going on this week, actually. I think there's only 20 entries at this point, so you've got a real opportunity to win. All you got to do is pick 5 games. Go to betteredge.com. That's betteredge.com. Use the code 5RSN. And then Prize Picks, our fantasy sponsor. You know how to play that at this point. But go to prizepicks.com. Use the code 5. That's the code 5, F-I-V-E. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. We always tell you this. We do all these contests on Twitter, on Off the Floor. If you're not subscribed with the code 5, you can't win. So get on there. Go to prizepicks.com. Use the code 5. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne.
Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. We've got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. We did not do a podcast directly after the preseason game in San Antonio. We wanted a little bit of time to kind of process what the topic would be because, of course, most of the Miami Heat regulars did not play. They left 9 guys at home, and then RJ Hampton, who we were kind of looking forward to seeing him on the floor, he then pulled a muscle in warm-up, so they were even more shorthanded. They went against Wemby. They were ahead for most of the game, actually, a tight game, and then the Spurs pulled away late. So if you had that on Better Edge, well, first thing, I pity you that you're betting preseason games on Better Edge. But if you did have that and you took the Spurs, you won. But what we're going to do is we're going to put this more into the big picture now that we got a chance to see some of the hopefuls get more minutes last night. And in particular, a guy who really hasn't stood out during the training camp preseason. He's not a name we were hearing a lot. We did have him on the podcast along with others. Everybody was very excited about him last year. Had some injuries, bounced around back and forth, and he's sort of stuck in a glut at his position. And we're going to get into that. But it's Jamal Cain, who performed extremely well last night. 24 points, 10 rebounds. Was not afraid. Shot the three well. Did his thing that he does defensively, and made us notice, and I think more importantly made the coaching staff notice. And so what we're going to get into is what the Heat do with these 5 spots that really may just be 4. It's 2 regular spots, regular contracts. Remember, Orlando Robinson already has one, not of those 2, but of another roster spot, again, provided that he's on the roster for opening night. And with the way that he performed yesterday and has performed in Summer League, I think that's a guarantee. So you've got 2 roster spots and now 3 two-ways. Prior, they had 2. The Heat were very much in favor of the expansion of the two-ways. We know that this works to their benefit. One, it saves them a little bit of money in terms of standard contracts, allows them to evaluate players longer, but also they've used these guys in the past, and they've developed these guys off of the two-way contracts. Caleb, of course, and others have been two-way contracts, Strus, from the beginning. So let's get to how we can see these spots playing out. And again, Alex, as I start, as of right now, the two-way contracts, the guys who came to camp on the two-way contracts are Drew Smith, Jamal Cain, and the third one now, top of my head, and RJ Hampton, who they brought in right before camp, but he had been down here. So those are the 3 on two-ways. Cole Swider's not on a two-way. Diallo's not on a two-way. Champagne's not on a two-way. They are just all competing. They may end up in the G League. They may end up somewhere else. They may end up overseas. Who knows? So let's start with this. I think there's only one spot available. I do not believe the Heat are going to fill that last spot right now. There's tax reasons for that. They didn't fill it last year, even when they had UD on the roster, taking a roster spot who they knew was not going to play a lot. People are going to talk about Goran Dragic. We can get into that over the course of the show. But what we're going to do to start here is let's start from the top. Do you think anyone on this roster has earned one of those two guaranteed spots, or do they need to go outside the organization to get someone?
So we covered some of this on playback last night, and I'm always plugging it because we're very consistent with it and we have a good time with everybody. So everybody go check that out if you haven't. Playback.tv/5RSN. You don't need to have a cable subscription to go in there and hang out with us. Like if you can have your own source watching the game, and then you can hang out with us at the same time. You don't have to watch it through playback. Just to I feel like we should probably say that more. But in general, I do think like it would be cool if they went outside the roster and picked up a guy like Javonte Green, for example, who has played a role, is 30 years old, and like I mentioned on another pod in the past, like and on Winnow, like he was the Bulls were a lot better when he was on the floor. That's just an example, right? Not that Javonte Green is gonna change the Heat's life. It's somebody who makes sense, who can come in and play a role, won't get in the way. But like we know, as we know, they have a glut in the front court, as you were referencing. So I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think anybody else is going to happen that isn't maybe a Goran Dragic. And even that doesn't feel like it's going to happen anytime soon. It almost feels like one of those things where like they sign him in March. And that's not like, that's just me completely speculating because it doesn't seem like he has a market, right? I don't think he's just saying no to teams because he thinks the Heat are going to sign him, right? So I don't foresee them signing anybody from the outside. I would think it's in their best interest if they can remain under the second apron to do that. But I think once you get past that, I feel like Jamal Cain has earned that spot. I think after how long has it been now? A year in their system. He stood out last preseason when he had those chances and people got excited about him. Bam kind of, hyped him up in that one video that was going around. And then, was a little bit quiet this time around, like, through training camp, through the summer, didn't have like a crazy summer league performance. And so, yeah, I think it was huge for him to have that type of game yesterday. And I do think he's been the guy who should deserve it. I think he's a plug and play utility type of role player who can do things for them. And as Brady pointed out last night on Twitter, like he has sped up the shot a little bit. I think him and Highsmith are guys whose shots look a little quicker as the season is about to start. And Jamal Cain's shot looks very fluid. I liked it before. And once, speeding up that release is only going to help to get that shot quicker, obviously. And then I just think like the guy can defend. He can go over screens, guarding the perimeter. He can cut. He honestly has had a few games when he has these chances where he has like big rebound games and he's not like a big guy, very athletic. Can hit the little floater once he gets close to the paint. Like I think he can do a little bit of a lot of things, and I think he can help them. I just don't know when he would be able to actually play. But I think if you had to say between, I know you put the poll between Swider,
Cain and Swider.
Yeah, between all those guys, I would say Cain. I think you can make a case for Swider because of the role, and I think you can make a case for RJ because he's been in the NBA. He's been on 3 other teams, and he was a highly touted player. So you can make the case for those guys, but Cain has earned it, in my opinion.
So let me give everybody that poll because I put that up about a couple hours ago before we potted here. Jamal Cain, 51. I said, if you can fill only one of the 2 regular spots, who should get it? Cain was 51%, Swider 35%, Hampton 8%, someone else 6%. Now, some of this is recency bias. I feel like if I'd thrown this poll up after the prior game where Swider went nuts in the fourth quarter, it would probably be flipped. I think if Hampton had played last night, he might have gotten a larger percentage of this. Here's all the factors, and you kind of hit on them as you were going through it, but here's all the factors you need to take into consideration when you decide who gets a regular spot. Okay? So let's go through these one by one. Well, one factor is how much can he contribute now? Because you're talking about a regular roster spot, not a 2-way. So again, before we get to the second, third, and fourth elements here, I think there are probably 4. The first element is how much can they contribute now? And this is where it gets a little trickier for Cain because they do have a glut at that spot. They have, because basically what happened last year was Highsmith got put ahead of him. Because they were kind of going into camp last year, and then when Cain had, the really strong training camp, we were kind of like, okay, who's got the higher upside here, Cain or Highsmith? Highsmith may be a little bit more trustworthy. Cain maybe with a little bit overall, better athleticism. Highsmith moved ahead of Cain last year. It's clear. I mean, he got the regular spot. He played not just in the regular season, but he played in the playoffs, and many believed he should have played more. Cain didn't get quite those opportunities. So I think the issue for who plays more now is, okay, who's ahead of them that would have to be out for them to get a chance? And if you look at Cain's situation in terms of wings on this team, well, you have an elite wing in Jimmy Butler, right? You've got a guy who was ahead of Highsmith in the pecking order, which was Caleb, right? Who is going to be at worst their sixth man. You've got Highsmith, who we all think is going to sneak in the rotation somewhere. I mean, look at the way he was defending Wemby in the post, right? So you have those three guys who are right now clearly ahead of Cain in terms of Spo's thought process right now, right? I mean, obviously Jimmy is and Caleb is, but I think Highsmith is too. Swider's a little different.
On top of that, you've got Jaquez in that kind of same
too,
category.
Right? No, exactly. No, I used to throw Jaquez in there too, right? So there's your first round pick, right? So you've got a little different player than Cain, but yes, a wing, right? I mean, a guy who's going to play, 2-3 primarily, maybe some 4, etc. And they have for years they didn't have enough of these guys. Now they had to go out and get Iguodala and Crowder. Now they have them all over the place, right? Like this is why they had to go get Ariza, totally past his prime a couple of years ago. So you're right. He's kind of fourth on the pecking order there. Whereas if you look at Swider, well, okay, for movement shooting, I mean, I guess you throw Tyler in there, but although he's a shooter in a whole bunch of different ways, there's Duncan, and really that's it. And that's why I do think for the first category, you look at that. Let me go to the second one, and then I'll let you kind of
no love for Tyler.
Cycle back in there. No, I'm Tyler, Duncan, and then Swider. I mean, essentially, right? Right. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so he's higher up on the. In other words, if Duncan gets hurt, they would need a guy like Swider probably. Whereas Cain, there have to be multiple players that would have to be hurt, traded, etc. And they're not trading Jimmy, obviously. Okay. The second part of this is, how concerned are you about someone else snapping the guy up eventually, right? Like, so, you put somebody, you give someone a standard contract because then he's got a guaranteed contract with you. You put him on a two-way, okay, he may be with you long-term, he may not. There may be another team that comes around wanting to sign him to a guaranteed. So I guess the second part of this we should evaluate is Cain and Swider. Who would be of more value to another team where you run the risk of losing them? And then the third thing is, who do you see as more of your program, more of a chance to be in your program in the future? So where is there more upside to develop the guy? So as I create those three categories, okay, and just to look at these two players, then we're going to throw RJ into it because I think these are really the three considerations. One, how much he can play now because of the position he plays. Two, what are the chances of losing him if you don't give him the guaranteed? Three, what's the long-term upside? Who wins when you play out those three factors?
It's really tough. I'm trying to do the math in my head, right? Trying to add all three things for each player. I mean, so for who can play right away, I honestly, you swayed me a little bit. You swayed me with what you said about Swider. It's got me second guessing my Jamal Cain answer now, because I do think Cain has earned it, and by the way he plays, and I like what he shows, and I think that he could use it. But like you said, they have so many other guys in the room, and I don't know that they absolutely would go to Cole right away if Duncan is out, but they absolutely could. The guy is out there doing the Duncan Robinson impersonation. It looks like Duncan out there. Maybe not all the way, but they have somebody who's an understudy basically. And so that part definitely, had me second guessing. And then when you talk about who can get snatched up, I think that's where RJ comes in, because he's been on other teams. And like I said, because he was a highly touted player coming into the league, I think a team could sell themselves on him maybe a little more than a guy like Swider, who, yes, is a shooter. And I think teams will always value shooting, but it's the defensive concerns are there. It's not as exciting, where I feel like a young team would rather have the upside and perceived talent that a guy like RJ Hampton has, who it feels like is a third right now. If you're talking about between these guys, it feels like he's in third place right now. Honestly, I don't know.
Throw in the third
I don't
category.
know.
Throw in the third category and include RJ in it then. Who has the longer term upside with this team? Is it Cain? So we say, okay, on the first category, who can play more right away? I think it is Swider because, again, of the lack of players at that particular spot. And we know that the Heat like a player at that position. The Strus role is there. I'm not saying Swider is going to fill it right away, but it's available. Nobody really left to create a role for Cain. That's I do think there's a better chance of him playing right away. The second part, again, if there were negative circumstances of someone else, plus the possibility that Duncan could get traded too, which is another thing
Exactly.
to consider.
Mm-hmm.
The second part of
You
this
can always
is who
promote
gets
him later.
well, you could, right? You absolutely could. The second part of this that I think you need to consider is, okay, who could get snatched up by somebody else? Well, both Swider and RJ were there, and nobody did snatch them up. And the Heat were able to get both of them. And Cain, it's hard to see with Cain. I'm not sure. I mean, another team may see a little bit more upside, like you said, sort of a bad team. But then again, with Cain, but I think he fits more as a glue guy on a good team, kind of like Highsmith does.
Yeah. No, I would say that about Hampton more than Cain. I think a young team
no.
could
Well,
build
Hampton,
a Hampton
I
flyer
think
more.
Hampton's the most likely to get another look from another team. I would agree with that. Okay, I think of the three. So to me, it really comes down to the long-term upside. And whether or not you think you can get away with see, I think the guy with the best long-term upside is probably RJ, but can you get away with just stashing him as a two-way right now and going about it that way? Because I do think if I was to say to you, who has the best chance to really be a factor in the league as a dynamic player? I mean, RJ has the history, right? I mean, he was a top, not just a top, he was like the top high school prospect. And they
And he
really
had like an
don't
up and down
typically invest
season
in
in New
those guys, but they
Zealand.
should.
Yeah, he had that. I remember he went and played professionally in New Zealand instead of playing college. I think it was kind of up and down. And then, he got drafted a little lower than, like you said, he being one of the top recruits in high school. Coming out of high school, I mean, I don't know. And he's 2 years younger than Swider and Cain. I was just looking that up. Cain and Swider both 24. RJ's 22. And he already has that element of remember if you want to reference like the Caleb thing, right? Where they got this guy who was on, in the league already on a two-way. That would be RJ, right? He's the guy who's, I mean, I guess you could say that about Swider too, but he mostly played like in the G League. Like he was technically in the NBA, but he mostly played in the G League. Whereas RJ actually played in the league and has played like 15 minutes or more over the past 3 or 4 seasons, however many he's been in the league. I want to say 3. And he's been on multiple
He had
teams.
moments in Orlando. He just ran into a glut there of sort of similar type guards, really, like combo.
Yeah,
guards.
and it's not a great sign when like all, again, young, highly touted guy, talented, all these things, and all 3 of these teams decided to move on from you. It's not a great sign. But again, like I think it's the type of guy who is worth investing into. But I'm saying that, and I'm not really investing in him because I'm not ultimately, in my opinion, like I wouldn't give him the guaranteed contract. I mean, is there a possibility they do 2 guaranteed contracts and promote 2 people?
So. I
don't think so. Under the second apron regardless. So why?
Well, yeah,
good. Why?
I think they're going to keep it open regardless. And then even Spo kind of made that point yesterday when he was talking about how many spots they really had available. And then I do think they want to keep a spot open in case, okay, let's say Kyle's still here and Kyle gets hurt and Goran is hanging out on South Beach with his kids, taking them to baseball games, okay, you can come in because I do think that's a possibility. They bring him in later. All right, I want you to hold the thought here. I want to introduce another of our sponsors. You're going to have to pick one because then I'm going to pick one because then we're going to get to, okay, who they give the 2 ways to, because that's the next layer of this after they do it. They do have the 3 2-ways. But I do want to mention our friend Danny and his team over at All Pro Construction Builders, allproconstructionbuilders.com. It is always hurricane season in Miami. Even if we haven't gotten the big one yet, it's coming at some point. Make sure you get your storm windows, your storm doors. Mention 5 Reasons, 5 RSN, 5, whatever you want to do. Just ask for Danny, 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. And you'll get 10% off your entire order. They're fully state certified. They also can do your renovation. So you're stuck in your house because we know it's a little hard to find one these days. Get your house renovated and do it with the best. All Pro Construction Builders based in Miami. They service the entire Tri-County area down here. 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. All right, I'm putting you on the spot here. 24-second clock. So who's your final decision? Who's getting the final contract? Or well, it's not the final. There's two, but we know they're only going to give out one. So who gets it? Still Cain?
I'm trying to be like, because honestly, what you said is really it factors in. And now I'm like trying to balance, like, well, Cain probably deserves it more versus, well, just based on how the roster is built, they might. Because the thing is, with the problem with the two-way thing is that it limits the amount of games you can play. So if they do move on from Duncan, or if Duncan gets injured or something like that, and all of a sudden that need is there, and again, I think they can get away with just playing a different sort of player there. I don't think you have to insert another Duncan type player there. But yeah, like that has to factor into the conversation, because the two-way inherently is gonna, extremely limit what a guy like Swider could do.
You're at the buzzer. 3, 2, 1.
Cain. I was about to say RJ. I don't even know why, because I was not thinking about RJ there.
Well, I know I threw you off, but I'm gonna go Cain also.
Come on, Ethan.
I was throwing the devil's advocate stuff in there because I think it's all reasonable. I do. And I think they may get stuck in a situation where somebody gets hurt. And if they've promoted Cain, then they're going to have to decide, okay, let's say Duncan gets hurt or something like that, or they need more shooting. Well, we're going to have to promote Swider now and then end up giving him the last roster spot, which I don't think is something that they necessarily want to do. But it's there for them if they need it. And that's why I'm just going to kind of say there's nobody out there that they're so desperate to sign right now. I don't believe that they can't do it. So I'm going to go with
Swider
Cain.
did say no to other teams too. So I forgot to say that.
They could. And look, if guys have done that before to stay around and it's worked out for them. Okay, so let's say Cain gets the two-way. And I think last night has a lot to do with it. He needed that. Like he has not jumped off the page during this during training camp and preseason from what I've heard, but last night he did. So the fact that you still have that ability, who knows? Maybe they move a wing at some point, and they may need Caleb insurance at some point if he's not here next season. So that's another thing to consider. But let's go from there. So there's 3 two-way spots. They don't always give them to guys who've been here in training camp. So that's very popular. Just like they don't always give them at the start of training camp to guys who are on their summer league team. Swider is a good example of that. In order, if Cain gets the guarantee, who gets the 3 two-ways?
So if Cain is getting the guaranteed, it's going to be Swider. It's going to be RJ Hampton. I would like to keep them around. And after that, it gets tough. I think if you want to go off the board, bring back Chase Audige, who was already there before. And I think they would have liked to have given a two-way before he got scooped up. But he was dropped
another
again.
another wing guard though.
Yeah.
Like
He's in that defensive guard mold. I would rather have him than Drew Smith, is what I'm saying. And I don't want to trash Drew Smith because everybody's trashing Drew Smith. I'm just gonna say outright, I don't want him to have the two-way spot. But the thing is, I defer to them because they're obviously the ones seeing him and they keep talking him up. From what I've seen, I wouldn't do it. But I'm obviously going to defer to the people who are seeing him all the time. So the third, if it isn't Audige, if it isn't Drew Smith, I will go Drew Peterson. I don't think he's like stuck out in this preseason or anything like that. But I think he showed me stuff in summer league, and seeing like the type of player he is, I wouldn't mind keeping him around as a two-way player
over Alondas Williams.
Yeah, I think so.
See, here's why I don't think it's going to be those 3. I'm with you. If it's Cain, it should be Swider and it should be Hampton. I think you're taking a swing on Hampton's upside, and you need a player of Swider's shooting ability in your system. I think there'll be a big from somewhere. It may not be from here. We saw Diallo play a little bit last night. He's aggressive. I'll say that. But I feel like they always have one developmental being, and the years they haven't had them, it's been a problem where they've had to go out and get.
But they already have them. They already have Jovic and they already have Orlando.
Well, that's true. Orlando, they did get the standard contract too. But again, I feel like you can never have enough. Like if we're talking about 4 spots here, don't you need somebody? Like let's say Kevin Love breaks down completely.
Well, the hole is that guard.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have a lot in the system. They never really have. That's the funny thing. Like
Yeah.
they had but
True.
there's been years that it's like, okay, they got to go get somebody. I wouldn't be stunned if it's one of those things where we come out of training camp and it is something like Cain, and then you're talking about Swider, RJ, and then some big that we haven't talked about at all, who they've been scouting, looking at during the preseason, who ends up getting a two-way with them. Is there anybody they can bring back? Chris Silva. Was that?
Audige.
But he's not big though.
I don't think it's going to be a big. I think. I mean, I was going to do that. I don't even know what it would be. I have a feeling it's not going to be a big because I think they have so many guys in that front court already. Not only wings, but like, you look through Bam, Orlando, K-Love, Thomas Bryant, Jovic. All those guys are bigs basically, and then not to mention all the front court players they already have. I think it would be in their best interest to just get a look at more guards, and that's me after saying Drew Peterson, who's not necessarily a guard, who's more like a guard forward. It would probably be in their best interest to have two guards developing in your two ways, get more of a look at RJ and that other guard who may be Drew Smith, maybe somebody else, and then just go from there. Because I agree with you. I think that's kind of been like their one, I guess you could say, weakness when it comes to developing, these unnamed players. Like they're amazing at it, but they're not necessarily. They usually don't do it with point guards. So I mean, if they can get two of them in their system, I think, yeah,
they've tried. They tried with Deontay Weber. They tried with Marcus Garrett.
Exactly.
And it hasn't hit. And Drew Smith, I don't. That to me, that looks like a miss. Also,
I think Audige and Hampton. Like if you tell me those are the two guards, and they're both in that mold, right? Like defensive hounds. They're not the same player. I don't like doing that to guys, but they're in that mold. And I would be. That's honestly pretty good. Like I like that. I think if you just tell me those two guys, I would take those two guys over like any other group of these two.
What is Marcus Garrett doing these days?
Please, we're good. No hate towards Marcus and Deontay Weber. Those guys were dogs too, and they could defend too. All right, but
yeah,
we're past it.
They have a type,
but we're never past Michael Beasley and Justice Winslow. Just to be clear.
Oh, by the way, they'll get on me if I don't mention this. They did develop Gabe Vincent. They did.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah.
We shouldn't neglect that. They did. Like I said, they have a type, and that type, the guy could actually shoot a little bit, and had a scoring profile in college. And whatever we think of the Gabe contract and whether they should get, it worked. I mean, he started in the finals. He started the playoffs the year before. He was a productive rotation player for them. It works. So we shouldn't say they can't develop. I mean, going way back.
I completely looked over that. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, I did too, and I'll get a phone call about that, and they would be right because we missed.
I've been upset about them not re-signing Gabe all summer, and I looked over it.
Right, and now we forgot about him. I mean, look, there have been other guys. I mean, Mike James, Anthony Carter. Through the years, they have developed guys who played in their rotation, but they seem to have the most success, honestly, with wings. If you look at, and look, Hassan.
Justice
Do we count Hassan? Do we count Hassan?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
I mean, he'd been in a few places, but
they got the production out of him. And honestly, and I'm not even being facetious. Like it took a while, but they optimized Justice when they put him at point guard. I know that was like, and it took a while, but they got to it. And honestly, that's when he looked his best. So I guess you could throw him in the mix.
I'll say this watching last night, okay, before we close here, and thanks to our sponsors, Better Edge, Prize Picks, and our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. Also, look for more information about the Rock Esports tournament we're going to have October 27th in Palmetto Bay.
On their website.
Make sure you go on the website, Rock Esports website. That's ROKesports.com, and sign up for the tournament. Right after the Heat Celtics games, we're going to have a 2K tournament. So go on there. It's $30 for the tournament, and there are prizes for the top finishers. But the one thing watching last night that was just fascinating, and look, Harlan was doing the game, so I mean, he does his homework. Okay, he's one of the few who does. Reggie Miller, I could live without listening to him another day in my life. But it was just funny because when they were talking, it was all Wemby or the Heat's developmental projects. Like they didn't really even talk about San Antonio's developmental projects. And it's just funny, like on a night that they were promoting Wemby, who's going to be great, okay, and everybody's jealous that they don't have him, and they should be because barring injury, he's the next guy.
So that was insane to watch.
And in that system, playing for Pop, and they're going to surround him with the right guys. But it was just funny watching Jamal Cain steal the show there because it's just like they just got another one. And I do think that Jamal doing that on that stage, on a national TV stage, in that environment, I think that's kind of what made my decision is that I think Swider has a chance to play first, but I just think they needed when I say Jamal needed to do that, he needed to do that, I think, to show, okay, I am a Miami Heat player and I'm not backsliding here. I'm gonna take that role. And he knew what the stakes were last night, and he played great. And I think that's why I think he's gonna get that last steal. So we'll see what happens with the rest of them. Again, thanks to Alex, Prize Picks, Better Edge, All Pro Construction Builders. We'll have full coverage of the Heat's preseason game on Sunday night against Memphis. It's a 6 o'clock tip. Dolphin game's at 1. I'll be in that traffic going to both. Have a good night, everybody.